Welcome to the Scene Snob interviews with your host, Mick Manhattan. Please like and subscribe to our channel and follow us at the Scene Snob.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Scene Snobs interviews, and today I am joined by a very special guest, somebody I'm very excited to talk to because I loved his film, The Shed, which is out now on the Shudder streaming service, or you can rent it over on Amazon Prime. I suggest you go and check it out. Today, the director and writer of the screenplay, Mr. Frank Sabatella. How are you today, sir?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I recently got a chance to sit down and watch this movie, and I from the tagline, I was in.
Cool.
I was scrolling through Shudder, and just a teenager finds a vampire in his shed. I was like, I'm in, and I had a preconceived notion with it. I was like, okay, it's got to be a horror comedy. And then I went in, and no, it is not. But what I got was such a great movie.
Oh, thanks, man.
And I'm so looking forward to talking to you about it. But I want to kind of start from the beginning, if you will. I want to take the time machine back and talk to you about horror movies and your beginnings in there, and maybe some of your influences along the way.
Man, horror movies for me have been, it's like lifelong. I can't remember a point in my life, and this is sincere, I can't remember a point in my life when horror was not a part of it. It started so early in my life with me. I mean, like, I can remember probably being 3 and 4 years old watching horror movies. Like, it's funny. My dad always said he didn't like horror movies, but like, all I can think back to is watching horror movies with my dad, whether it was like Abbott and Costello Meet Dracula, or, like the weird old 50s B movies. I remember them watching it with my dad, the giant radioactive ants. So horror and monsters were just always kind of in my life. And it just always fascinated me. I don't know why. I really can't say why, but it's always been there. It's just a part of me.
Well, I definitely noticed that in the film you have him watching The Terror with Boris Karloff and Jack Nicholson in it. So I mean, not many know that movie, so you got to be a true horror fan to really.
I just wanted to sneak Jack Nicholson into my movie so I could say I directed Jack Nicholson. But
there's nothing wrong with that.
What we did there though was. We needed the original plan was I was going to shoot my own fake movie for him to be watching in that scene. Just a little segue. But to be honest, we ran out of time and we ran out of money, and we were just like, look, we got to find something that we can use. And The Terror happens to be royalty free. And I was like, oh, this would be perfect. And we'll just put in our own audio and fake it,
I love that. And so going through it now, talking about how you grew up with horror movies, watching with your dad and stuff. That's an awesome story. But is there any maybe decade or time frame of horror movies that you gravitate towards more? I saw a lot of 80s and 90s influence in there.
Yeah, I think 80s, late 70s into early mid 80s is like the golden age of horror. I think everybody kind of knows that, or at least certainly the golden age of slashers. I was born in 78, so I really grew up in the 80s. So I really had the advantage of just absorbing all those incredible 80s horror movies that, you look back and some of them are cheesy. In fact, a lot of them are, but there's such a like fun and fearful and gory, gross aspect to it. Like, to me, that's just like, it's like what I call comfort horror, like it feels good when you watch it, even though it's scary. I relate it back to my childhood, so it's nostalgic, and I don't know, it's just great stuff. So I love to, when I can, incorporate the 80s values into modern horror movies, even though I want my movies to sort of feel timeless and current at all times. I have to, I don't think I could stop myself from having that influence.
And I love that term, comfort horror, because it's so on point. It really is, because I mean, we all have that. We have those. Any movie genre, really, but horror. There's something about it, like you have your favorites you got to watch.
Sure.
So with this, I wanted to ask about the shed. I had a feeling like it either takes place in the late 80s or the early 90s.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever specifically said, but let me tell you, through your art direction, your props, the set design of it, like it just, you nailed it. You really did.
You're too nice to me.
It's those little things I pick up on, and I'm just like,
yeah. For me, there was, in the script, it never said like, it's 1986 and here's what we're doing. Like, it never had like a timestamp in the script, so it's never explicitly stated. But for me, it is effectively probably somewhere between 87 and 91. But I didn't want the nostalgia, so to speak, to overwhelm the film. I didn't want it to be a distraction. I just kind of wanted it to be, this is where it is, and I don't have to draw all this extra attention to it. I just wanted to have that feeling, it could be today theoretically, except for there's a lot of analog technology lying around. But I just didn't want the timepiece to so much be a feature, not like Stranger Things where it's like nostalgia porn, which is amazing. You know what I mean? But with Stranger Things, which is an incredible show, you're blown away by the 80s-ness of it, and I didn't want that. I wanted it to really be the backdrop for which my character drama is played upon, And
I actually, before we get into the story, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the filmmaking side. Like, when did you know you wanted to get into filmmaking? What inspired you, and what paths did you take to get into filmmaking?
It wasn't really like a clear, direct route for me, but I think starting with being so into monster movies when I was a kid, started there, and I used to, as soon as I could hold a pen and write, I was writing scary stories, not good ones, but like childish, scary stories. And then in my early teens, I started taking my dad's VHS cam and making, backyard horror movies with my brother and my friends. And, they were dumb and fun, but we did it. And I'm not saying that was a conscious point of being like, oh, I want to be a filmmaker. I don't think I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I think when I consciously decided I'm going to pursue the actual filmmaking career was probably, somewhere around college. I was like, you know what, I could probably like really actually try and do this. Why not? So it sort of just like unfolded itself and presented itself to me. I've been a photographer since I was about 13. So it just all sort of, between loving horror movies and writing stories and being a photographer, it just kind of all came together organically,
And did you go to film school, or is it?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Which school did you go to, if you don't mind me asking?
So I like attended Hofstra, sort of. Like, I wasn't enrolled in Hofstra, but a buddy of mine was in the film program in Hofstra, and I just started going, and like nobody ever checked if I was supposed to be there or not. So I did that for a semester, and I made a film with him out of Hofstra. And then after that, I went to New York Film Academy in Manhattan, which was at the time it was in Union Square, but I think they moved it. And then right after I got out of New York Film Academy, I started working on sets, and a few years later, I made my first feature, which was Blood Night in 2009. And that was it.
That's fantastic, man.
It sounded a lot easier than it was. It was not that, you know what I'm saying? Like, there was, it wasn't like, oh, I got into film school, I made a feature, and here we are. But those are the bullet points,
No, absolutely. And, I have a lot of indie filmmakers and film students that check out the show, and especially because I try to talk to as many filmmakers as possible because I love the process. And, they get it. And, the process, you got a PA for a long time before you get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. My first job on a set, I think I was just like pouring soup for people. I was like getting soup from a deli and handing out soup. So that was my first film job. I PA'd for a few years. I've done every position on set just about that you can think of.
Yeah, and it's such an exciting experience. Filmmaking is one of those things I've always said that you can't wait to go home at the end of the day, but you can't wait to get back.
Right, exactly. When I wrap a production, I'm always just like, why do I do this to myself? And then some time passes, and I'm like, I can't wait to get back on set. You know,
it is. It's like it's an amazing experience. You can't. It's hard to explain, but it really is.
Let me add this about film school. You know, I went to film school because I felt like it was what I wanted to do and had to do at the time. But if you don't have the means to go to film school, don't sweat it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean you're not going to be a filmmaker. There's so much information available. The technology is so demystified and so cheap. You know, where there's a will, there's a way. You can learn anything you want instantly. You know what I mean? Between the internet, between the library, between YouTube. Joe Bob recently on At the Drive-In had a long rant at the end of his show, and it was spot on. So if anybody hasn't seen that and you're an aspiring filmmaker, I highly suggest you pull up Joe Bob Briggs's conversation about film school. It's on YouTube. You know what I'm talking about, right? Have you seen it?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a huge Joe Bob fan here, and
yeah, me too.
He did that whole speech was just amazing.
It was perfection. It really was.
And that was one I took because I went to film school, like you said, and I appreciate all of the friendships I made when I was in film school, which I still have some of them today.
Yeah.
And the experiences I had, but I 100% agree with you. And I try to tell filmmakers all the time, like, just don't think you have to go. Like, just go.
You don't have to go. It's great to go. You know, it taught me so many incredible elements of the craft. But I went in 2002. The information was not as it's almost like I had to go to access the information. You don't have to do that now. The information you're going to get from film school is accessible. I'm not downplaying film school. I want to encourage people that for whatever reason, if they don't have the time or the means or the money, whatever, you're still good. You can be a filmmaker. You can learn.
Absolutely. And you're going to make, just even getting on set, whether you start out PAing or, whatever else, just get on a set and you're going to make those same friendships. You're going to make those same things. So absolutely.
When I did my first film, my first production, my first feature that I was directing, film school went out the window. Like, it was almost like nothing I learned at film school prepared me to make a feature film, to direct a feature film. You know, I mean, like, film school gives you the craft and it gives you some of the technical aspects, but you're not really learning in film school that your role as a director or whatever your desired role as a filmmaker is, director or cinematographer or whatever you desire to be, you're getting elements of that in film school. But as a director, what I feel you're not getting in film school is how you're driving your team to create your vision. You don't get that from film school. You get that from experience.
Yeah, I know, like, for me with film school, one thing I'm very thankful for is, like, I walked in, I think, like, everybody who walks into school says, I'm going to be the next writer-director. And I walked in the same way, but I walked out and I realized I don't really have an interest in writing or directing. Well, writing I still enjoy, but I don't have an interest in directing. I really have an interest in producing.
Sure.
And I saw so many people I came out with. And now this is something, anybody listening, this isn't something that you just learn in film school. Going on set, you'll learn this too.
Right.
But, like, I walked out, like, wanting to produce. I have friends that were like, I just want to be a cinematographer, or I just want to be a gaffer. Like, these are the jobs I really enjoy.
Sure. I mean, it's great. It's film school is good. I'm not saying film school is bad. It's great. And you're going to discover things. You're going to make friendships, etc.
Yeah.
It's definitely a value, but all I'm saying is don't feel left out if you can't go to film school.
And that's perfect advice, and appreciate it. Thank you. But just to kind of going forward, so you did Blood Night in 2009. Man, you have such a great look to your movies too. Like,
thanks, man.
Really do. And now, how much of that, like, how close were you? Did you use the same cinematographer on both movies, or I didn't?
No.
So, all right. So, like, you can see the eye. I definitely see your eye in your movies. And I also, the acting The acting in The Shed, especially,
Thank you.
because it's most recent in my mind, was just beautifully done. And
I had such a killer cast, man. They were phenomenal.
They were fantastic, and just to see like J.J. Warren, who plays Stan in the movie, is the lead character. You feel everything he's going through.
Yeah.
And like he just holds the emotion in his face, and it's a sign of like a really good actor. He doesn't rely on dialogue, but he delivers the dialogue great. And
yeah,
you can tell that through your direction, absolutely. But he definitely does have everybody did. Cody did, who played Dahmer and such. So
yeah.
Now, how much of that, like going in, how much did you relate to life? Like, because it seems like there's a lot of personal experiences that you wrote into the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems like that. I don't know if they're actually personal experiences, but like, if that you wrote into the movie, this isn't just this isn't just a horror movie about a vampire in a shed. Like, there's a lot of themes in this movie, and take me through that a little bit while you were writing it and then directing it. Like how, what do you want to?
It started out as a horror in a vampire movie, a vampire in a shed horror movie. In the earliest incarnations, it was a short story that my buddy Jason Rice from film school wrote. It was a 10-pager about a vampire in a shed, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. A few years later, after I did Blood Night, I was thinking about what I wanted my next project to be. I had finished writing another feature. And then I called up Jason and I was like, hey, that story you wrote about the vampire in the shed, I was like, I'd like to take that from you if I could and develop it into a feature. And he gave me his blessing and got him involved. And I took it from there and I started adding the thematic qualities of Stan's character. Like I think I started seeing it early on as a metaphor, like the vampire in the shed sort of became this like metaphor for like the inner darkness in Stan, the things Stan didn't like about himself and the things he didn't like about his life. So he's holding in all that pain and misery, and it's manifesting itself inside the shed. So the shed is sort of a representation of his like his inner heart, I guess you could say, right? Mm-hmm. And I started thinking, if this vampire is the manifestation of all he hates, how is all he hates about himself? He's at war with himself, really, and he's at war with his world. So I started just thinking, how do we apply those concepts into, a horror movie? How do we make a horror movie out of it? And it just started unfolding from there. And then when Peter Block, my producer, got involved later on in the writing process, we started talking about Dahmer's character and being like, we can pull all of Dahmer's anger and stuff forward even further. He was a little more background in earlier drafts. Dahmer really mostly revolved around Stan and Bane in the shed. And then we started thinking like, well, how is this going to affect everyone in his life? And that's when we started pulling Dahmer forward and started bringing in that extra layer of conflict, and then seeing how the two characters would sort of pervert these emotions. Like Stan sort of comes to this realization, like, oh, I need to fix this. How can I fix this? And Dahmer starts looking at it like, how can I use this? And then you have this duality, this conflict that comes, and that's really what makes any interesting movie is conflict. So once we sort of landed on that theme of the conflict between them, it sort of just opened itself up to a whole new level of emotion, I guess you could say,
Yeah, a lot of one of the themes we talk about on our shows a lot here on the Scene Snobs are bullying and things like that. Mostly because I know with today a lot of things are online, but I try to relay. This is a geek pop culture. We're horror fans here, everything else. But back in the day, and I'm sure you remember, that wasn't an okay thing to be outwardly, accepting of. Like,
I was like the weirdo in my high school. You know what I mean? Like, I was one of very few kids that like read Fangoria and was like into horror and like, you know, like back then I had like long hair and I was like all kind of punked out and grungy and stuff. And that was not the norm in the high school I went to, you know? So, you know, I was sort of that misfit kid with a small group of my misfit friends, you know? It's become, you know, geek culture, or if you want to call it that, or the sort of, like, you know, horror has gone pop. So it's cool now, thankfully. But it wasn't then. It was way more of an underground sort of cult thing, you know? So I understand, you know, being the outsider, you know what I mean? And I think whether you were a horror geek in the 80s and 90s or not, like, I think everybody can relate on some level, for the most part, to being an outsider. So I think that helps people connect to these types of characters, you know?
Absolutely, and you did it so well, and that's again another reason I wanted to talk about that, like with the review and stuff I did for it. How you conveyed that really well. Again, you don't actually mention, you can take this story and you can put it at any time today. You can even put it back in the '60s, and I think it works on such a great level. But where you placed it, I think, was perfect because of the bullying theme, and you know, even like his times with his grandfather, and you know, and the type of bully his grandfather was, like, it just works so well, and I think that reaches out to people, and I think it's a connection for audience too, for, like, you know, like you said, because even today, as much as it's pop, there are still people who are like, you know, they still feel that, and I think watching this helps that, because it's like, we still have that connection, because, like, you know, other movie fans growing up, like, that was your connection. You were, parents didn't understand, teachers didn't understand, other kids didn't understand, but they understood.
You know, my parents still don't understand, and my father passed away, but my mother, like, I always feel like an idiot when I talk to my mother about projects I'm working on. You know what I mean? Like, I'm confident, but then once you're like explaining it to your mom, you feel like a child. Like, well, I'm writing a story about a vampire, and it's going to be really great. And she's like, "That's nice, dear." You know, like, you still feel like a dummy. You know what I mean? You know, it's not mainstream enough, I guess you could say. You know what I'm saying?
It's the generational gap that always hits.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, one of the actors you have in the movie, I have to ask about, because I love him so much. Is Mr. Frank Whaley, who plays the hunter in the film.
Mm-hmm.
How was it? What was it like? I mean, this is you know, he goes back so long, and, like, I'm sure you were a fan going in. Like,
we only had Frank on set a short amount of time, actually. So we didn't get to really, like, you know, connect as much as me and the rest of the cast and all of us did. But when, you know, you have an actor like that sort of brings those years of talent to a production, it's just awesome. You know what I mean? Like, he's got a great look. He knows what's going to make a scene work. He was very like in the finale, he was very like vocal and helpful in terms of, like, you know, as we were figuring out, like, stunt coordination and action and blocking. You know, he has so much more experience than I do. He's just been doing it so much longer that he was just very helpful in being like, well, you know, maybe if I'm over here, turn here and do that. Like, it was great. He kind of, like, really stepped in and helped us, like, push through that stuff. So it was really cool.
Well,
he didn't like having dirt dumped on his face, though. He wasn't happy about that.
No, I can imagine, but he brought something to it that I mean, every actor in this brought, like, a special quality to it, to their characters. But Frank stepping in, like, as a director coming in, and, like you say, as much as he helped you guys, like, trying to kind of get through it, but from a directing standpoint, from directing actors and how to work with actors, what did you take anything away from him that going forward that you're like, okay, I can maybe I'll start doing this?
I think what I took away from him was the importance of making a personal connection with an actor as a director. Because, like I said, I had less time with him, so it was, and I think he's a little more guarded in certain ways. So it was more difficult, I think, for me at first to make that sort of personal connection with him. And I think once you establish that personal connection and you sort of have that laughing, you know, you need that first, like, laugh together. You know what I mean? That kind of gives you that bond. And it took me a couple of days to get that with him. But once we kind of like chuckled a few things out, and it kind of like became like cool, it got better. So I think what I took away was just make sure you're able to make some sort of personal connection with your actor beyond the work that you're doing, I guess, so to speak, because that's going to make things easier, because you need that sort of level of comfort and trust. And I know myself, even though I'm a pretty experienced director, but he's a far more experienced actor than I am an experienced director. So there's always that sort of level, I guess, of intimidation, or at least that's what I felt, because I was like, okay, wow, I'm working with Frank Whaley, so I think it's like I had to sort of convey my own confidence in myself to him so he can feel confident in me, and then at the same time make this personal connection where we're like, all right, we're cool, we understand what's going on, and we're going to work together. Okay.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
That's and great answer. Thank you for that. It's a great advice. So writing this, and I believe I read somewhere that it took maybe about 7 or 8 drafts to finish the final.
I think we shot the 7th draft, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
I mean, that's just from a writing standpoint. Just if you can walk us through that process of like, how long did it take to get through 7 drafts? And
I had been writing this film on and off for about 5 years before we made it. So I early on, my first draft is always sort of what, you may hear a lot of writers refer to it as like the vomit draft. You're just like, get it out, just get everything on paper. Any cool thing, just put it all out. I'll clean it up later. I always refer to the first draft as the Wild West. You might have heard me say this in other interviews, but to me, the first draft is the Wild West. Anything goes. Fucking shoot them up, get them out. Everybody hit the deck, whatever. The second draft, new sheriff comes to town. So now you're starting to clean things up, and you're starting to give it structure and shape, and the important things are starting to land where they go. And then you're like, all right, cool. Now this sort of makes a little more sense. Third draft is where you start really being like, well, what am I doing here? What is the theme? What is the story? Because I truly believe you don't know that in the first and second draft. It starts showing itself to you. And around the third or fourth draft, I guess, is when Peter, my producer, got involved, Peter Block, and the producer's going to come in with notes. So me and him started looking at it and reading notes. He would give me notes. We would discuss the notes. And then we were like, all right, well, let's try this. Let's try that. And that's when we started experimenting. So we had our 5th draft. And then we looked at the 5th draft. And then me and him both had more ideas. Well, how can we expand this theme more? How can we – let's make this character a little more important. Let's kind of pull this character back, not as important. Well, let's eliminate this character altogether, and you start – just shaping it up. You're just constantly chipping away, making it look better, making it read better, making it feel better. And then around the 5th, I guess it was the 5th or 6th draft, we started sending it out for financing. And then once the financing came in, we were like, all right, we're going to shoot this baby. And between then and actually shooting, we did one more full draft.
Oh, wow. So
yeah, you want to, you want to make it as best as you can. You know what I'm saying? So like, as you're preparing to shoot, you just start thinking, what if this, what if that? And sometimes that, in that last, I think like 3 or 4 nights before we shot the film in Syracuse. We were up in Syracuse. We're all up in Syracuse, getting ready for production. And I think it was like 3 nights before we started shooting, Peter sent me like 10 pages of notes for the script. And I was like, oh, fuck. And like we went through them, and we just, those last, those extra, 5 to 10% more effort at the end can give you a 50% better script. You know what I mean? So it behooves you to go through those steps. And a lot of times we would write something in and then look at it and be like, no, it was better before. Let's pull it back. It's just a process, because you don't know what you're getting. That's the thing. You don't know what movie you have until you make the damn movie. You know what I mean? Like writing it's abstract in a sense, because no matter what, at the end of the day, it's just words on paper. You're only hoping that like, all right, can I convey this I have to take this literary thing that I've put together, these words that have come from abstract thinking, and now I'm standing here and there's a shed made of wood and I got actor, like now it's real. Now I'm in 3D time and space. So like, is this going to translate? So, it's kind of a crapshoot in many ways. People don't realize that, and the film you shoot is different than the film you wrote, and the film you edit is different than the film you shot. It's crazy.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to ask you about along all of these drafts, had it ever changed so drastically where you're like, okay, it started out as a vampire in a shed, and now it's zombies in a garage, like something like that. Where
the core always remained. You know what I mean? The core never changed. I think it's the flesh around the fruit that kind of changed here and there. Like I said, in some of the earlier drafts, Dahmer was not as prominent. I think if I remember in the second and third draft, Roxy and Dahmer were brother and sister, if I remember. And I'm trying to think of what some of the little changes were. Roxy and Dahmer were brother and sister, and Stan had just moved to that town. He didn't live there. They weren't friends their whole lives. They had all just met. So that was like an earlier thing. So thematically, the events were still effectively the same, but the nature and relationship of the characters were different. You know what I mean? Then I think subsequently I think Roxy and Dahmer were no longer brother and sister. They were just like best friends. And then Stan came in, and that was an initial source of conflict for Stan and Dahmer because Stan and Roxy started having a romantic relationship, and it was pissing off Dahmer, who was her best friend. So they were, you're just trying out different things with the characters until you find the right fit, I guess,
And I got to tell you, I'm glad you said that because, going through this, like, it really shows. I mean, those are all really good ideas, but the ends, you got to the right place for you for this film.
I think so. I hope so.
I think so. I think it's a great story. And I talk about Vampire in the Shed, and the Vampire in the Shed is almost the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
It's a little showdown, which really makes it prevalent. And I love the idea of Stan's view of how do I fix this.
The showdown for me, like, it's funny because there's some reviews that said the third act, the attic, basically, they were like, oh, it just kind of became like another horror movie and blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, that's right, it did. Like I'm making a horror movie, and we spent 80 minutes on character drama. Like, now I want to give you some fucking slasher action. Leave me alone. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I wanted. I chose that. I wanted to have character drama. You care about the characters. You're wondering what's going on. And now that all the character drama is resolved, let's get to some really good horror. Let's have some slasher vibes. I love slasher movies.
You mean like Fright Night or The Lost Boys? They all did the same thing. And that's why I loved it, because it ramped it up, because I am involved in this movie. I've been watching, I'm learning these characters, and it's interesting because you're learning different, they're reacting to everything going on.
And now you're invested in what happens.
I watching the whole thing, I was like, it cannot end in the shed. I was like, it can't. And I was picking up on your theme, and that Stan is trying to fix this by keeping everything tightly in.
Yeah.
It has to break out. Mm-hmm. It has to get out of the shed, and it makes perfect sense it would end up in the house, and work that way. Like, it invades his safe zone. And I really enjoyed that. I think it's great. I love
Thank you. And you also have the entire movie. You have Bane, the vampire, trapped in the shed, and then we flip it, and now Stan and Roxy are trapped in the house. Instead of locking him, now they're locking themselves in. So it's like they sort of are now, it's like the karma comes back around. Yeah,
and the nice part about that too is their characters have developed so much. Were developed perfectly so much that when they're ready to fight in the end, it's because they've reached that point. They've not been trained. I mean, it's not the Karate Kid, but it's like their confidence has gotten to the point where it's like fight or flight, we're ready to fight.
You have, there's a screenwriter term, the dark night of the soul, when you're talking about your characters, and that's where the dark night of the soul is the moment in the movie where your main character realizes, everything is fucked up. I've done everything wrong. What did I do wrong? How do I change? And Stan has that moment in the house with Roxy, when they're like sitting by the fireplace and he's like telling her, this is all my fault and I should have done this, I should have done that. That's his dark night of the soul. And that's where he has this determination of like, all right, everything I've done so far has been wrong. Because that's what certain people don't realize too when they're watching the film. If you really pay attention to what Stan is doing, everything he does was a mistake. Everything he does leads to all of this tragedy. So he's basically at that point like, all right, everyone's dead because of me, basically, and now we have to fix it.
100%, and that was conveyed. I think it was conveyed perfectly. I picked up on it and really enjoyed that. So, just to kind of get into more of the shooting side of things. So, I think it took you what was it, about 17 or 18 days to shoot this?
It was 17 official days, and then we had an 18th day where pretty much just me and my cinematographer. Let's say we borrowed the production gear, and we convinced Stan, we convinced JJ and Cody to come out with us for an afternoon to catch some additional shit that we needed. So we did a day with no crew where we kind of like stole a bunch of shit. We went to locations we had no permits for, and we weren't like, there's like union rules and all this stuff. Don't repeat this, but we were not supposed to be doing what we did. So actually disregard all that from the record. Everything was, yeah, but yeah, it was 18 days basically. 17 and a half days,
So from storyboarding it to getting your shot list down, like
I didn't really storyboard this film. I didn't.
You didn't?
I am all about storyboarding, but with this particular picture, I did not have the time to fully storyboard. So me and my cinematographer, Matthias Schubert, who's incredible, we had such a small amount of time to prepare for the actual shoot. We had, I think it was like 2.5 weeks of preparation for an insanely intense shoot for 17 and a half days. So we basically skipped storyboarding, and what we did, me and Matthias every night would get together. We were in the hotel in Syracuse. We'd get together. We'd get a bottle of wine and the script, and we just went through it like with a fine-tooth comb, and we were like, what is the most effective way to shoot this? And we would draw, instead of storyboards, we were drawing like overhead views, like bird's eye view diagrams of the backyard and the house. And instead of storyboarding the shots by frame, we were making what do you want to call it? Like we were making like maps of like how the camera was going to move to capture what things. So the way we shot this film was a little different, I guess, than you would normally cover a production. So since we had such a short amount of time, and I didn't want the film to look rushed, I wanted the cinematography to be active and moving and have great framing and look unique. What we ended up doing was we had 2 cameras running at all times. Camera A, which would catch all of the main action, was always on a Ronin, like a moving, it's like a steady cam rig basically. Camera B was on the sticks on tripod. So what we would do is almost every scene, we would shoot what we would call movie coverage. So if you notice, a lot of the sequences are shot, they're actually one long take where the camera will like come out of the house with Stan, and we're close on Stan and we're following with him and we move, but then Stan keeps going straight and we move the camera left and we get away, and now we're in a wide shot, and then we move back around when like Grandpa comes out or something. So we had these like moving S-shaped camera paths that were going in and out. So we were getting multiple coverage in one take while B camera was picking up the additional elements. Maybe grab a close-up of Grandpa while he's doing his thing, or a close-up of Stan, or whatever it may be. And then when we got into the editing room, I had this nice flowing superfluous coverage that I could then cut in and out of at will without having to resort to I really can't stand handheld cinematography. I think the look is it's overdone. No offense to anybody that uses it. This is just for me personally. I think it's overused, and to me, it just looks like you were in a rush and you didn't have the time to do your setups, which is understandable. And I've done it in films in the past, but I did not want to do that here. I wanted everything to look deliberate and well paced. And the only way I could do that with the time we had was to shoot it the way I just described. So in lieu of storyboarding, we made these overhead diagrams of every sequence of where the actors would be standing approximately in relation to the shed, the house, whatever it may be, and how the camera was going to move to capture close up, medium, wide, etc., and make it smooth. And I took a lot of have you seen Poltergeist?
Yeah.
Okay, I think one of the greatest examples of this is when we get to the third act break of Poltergeist. If you remember, Tangina gives this speech, and she's like, blah, blah, blah. Now let's go get your daughter. And they cut to this next moment is they're all up in the hallway, right? If you remember the scene, Tangina's up front, and mom and dad are standing behind her, and the other tech guys are there. And the camera never moves, or it moves very slightly. But Tangina moves really close to the camera, so we have this close-up. Then she moves back, and mom and dad move forward. So now we're in this like 2-shot. Then they move back a little. Then Tangina comes in, and we have a 3-shot. So you're getting all these multiple size shots without even moving the camera. So I was being inspired by that. And there's a sequence in Jaws that does the same thing when Chief Brody and Martin are walking with the mayor by the billboard, and they're explaining to him the importance of this, that, and the other thing. And the camera's just walking with them, and they're moving in and out of the shot, creating different shot sizes. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's amazing. And
yeah, so I was taking those elements and incorporating that into the way that I wanted to direct this and have it look, and what Matthias wanted to do with the look of the film. And we just figured out how to make that work for us. And I think it worked.
And it absolutely worked, because I was blown away by the cinematography in this. And but the fact that you guys have almost created like a choreographed dance in a way to get that, and that's a fantastic point of shooting. And
if you ever go back, if you watch the film again, watch it for those things. You'll see what I mean, like how the camera moves and stuff. I think it becomes apparent when you know about it.
I am definitely going to. I was going to watch it anyway again, but I definitely, like you said, comfort horror. There are certain things I like that. And one thing I will say with this, and kind of how it was shot and how it looks, I would have expected. I truly thought this would have been storyboarded out to a T, because it seems like you had.
We didn't have the time to do it. And I'm not saying we had zero storyboards, but like the storyboards, I wouldn't even call them storyboards. I had like terrible quick sketches that were, when I say we wrote them on the back of the script, I'm not exaggerating. We had like on set, me and Matthias were sitting there, and we'd have this like extra pile of papers, like, where's page 45? Quick, let me see the back of it. And it was just this like terrible stick figure scribble that we threw together. We didn't have time for proper storyboards.
Well, how did that help in terms of? Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. I'm excited learning this. But how did it help in terms of the speed of maybe shooting the story, like the choreographing everything and getting that together?
I think if we didn't shoot it the way we shot it, if we tried to shoot it with standard coverage, standard coverage meaning wide, medium, close, which of course there's moments of standard coverage throughout the film. You can't avoid it. But if we were locked into standard coverage, we would not have such a good looking film. It wouldn't be such interesting cinematography. So where what I described may sound complex, it actually made us able to move much faster, because the one camera was never resting. It was always moving. So we never had to set up sticks. There's no dolly in the whole film. We didn't use dolly track once. We didn't have time for that shit. I would love to dolly the fuck out of everything, but we didn't have time. So, So I was like, all right, what's the next best thing? And Matthias was like, we have to get a Ronin or a Movi. I don't remember which rig we used, whatever it was. And he's like, this is what we have to do. So he brought that concept in. And once we locked into that, we were like, all right, this is how we have to do it. It's the only way we're going to be able to do this in 17 days and have a great looking film. So it helped us move fast because in one take, in one shot, I'm getting 5 shots. I'm getting my close-up, my wide, my master. I'm getting everything. I'm getting movement where I want it. And simultaneously, I have B camera getting me the lock-offs that I need. If I need just a steady close-up of Stan, camera number 2 is getting it from the other angle. I know, boom, I can cut back and forth if I have to. If a take doesn't work out as one fluid take, no worries. I can cut to B camera. I'm going to have something to cut away to. I have B-roll. I have close-ups. I have whatever I need. I can make it work.
That's awesome.
And I didn't know it was going to work until we got into the editing room. It could have been, it could have been like, oh my God, this didn't fucking work. But
it is good to have that coverage.
We had an editor on set who was assembling day by day. So we had a rough idea that what we were doing was working, thankfully.
That's awesome. And that's such a cool way. So I know we're kind of short on time, but I do want to ask a couple more questions. So real quick,
sure.
Having shot a movie in this way now going forward, is that something that you're more inclined to try again, or to choreograph?
I would like. Sure. So I want to do something better and different every time, but I really liked the way we did this, and I like the result. I think what I would like to do next time, depending on the material and what type of shooting it calls for, I would like to figure out how to do this better, because it was born of having only 17 days to shoot. So if I were to do it again, I would like to do it with even more deliberation, probably storyboard further, probably test better rigs and stuff like that. Like, even though the camera is very smooth, there is a lot of motion, which lends itself to this story. But there are some instances where I wish things were a little tighter. I wish we could have laid down some dolly track here and there for certain things, but it just didn't seem relevant. So I think I think I would incorporate everything that I did here into my next film, but do it probably different and better. I mean, that's continuously the goal, right? You want to do it different and better. If you ever watch my film Blood Night, you'll see a lot of handheld, which I just finished saying that I don't like. But maybe it's because I had to use it so much with Blood Night that made me not like it, because I knew I wasn't using it necessarily. There are instances where you use handheld where it makes perfect sense. There are instances where you use it, or I can't say you, I mean, for me, there are instances where I used it where it made perfect sense. There are instances where I used it because we were in a rush. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I didn't repeat that mistake with the shed going forward. So on my next one, I would take the same things I did and just build on it and try to do it better.
Well, I want to talk about just real quick, what you have planned, but I want to compliment you beforehand. I thought the vampire in the beginning, I mean, the makeup effects look cool throughout. Were they all practical? Yeah,
all the actual, whatever's on people's faces was practical. Frank Whaley's vampire eyes were CGI. Because there was a problem with his contacts, so he couldn't wear contacts on set, so we had to do that CGI. And there is some enhanced blood where the blood didn't do what we wanted it to do, so we had to enhance a little bit of blood.
Nice. I mean, it all looked really cool, and I really enjoyed the practical effects. I love the vampire in the beginning, the first vampire we see.
Cool.
I really dug that Nosferatu type look that you were going for. I really enjoyed that.
So that for me, that vampire is like, the classic Nosferatu gothic vampirism. For me, like a little bit of the meaning behind that, we have this, because the rest of the movie, it would make no sense to have like a gothic vampire in a cape. That's not the kind of vampire movie we're telling, For me, that was sort of a nod and a kind of kiss goodbye to the old vampire. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to introduce that, have that vampire pass on its essence, and then it burns in the sun. So that was me kind of saying, I'm moving the vampire away from this to my type of vampire. And then that's also why I wanted to sort of bring the, you pointed out the terror was just sort of, again, to show that even though like the classic traditional vampire is dead, so to speak, we can still honor and value him and grow from it. You know, that was that was my meaning to it. I don't know if anyone else cares about that, but
that's very cool about it. And so now with the Shed out, congratulations on distribution and on Shudder. I've been talking about it. Like you said, I'm a part of what's called the mutantfam.com, which is they work with Joe Bob Briggs and such, and Darcy's Mail Girl.
Oh, I'm not a part of that. How do I join the club?
We're on Twitter. I'll get you on there, man. Absolutely, they would love it. And it's just we do they have Friday Night Frights where we host different movies. We're doing a 24-hour movie marathon.
Cool.
Where we each sponsor.
Twitter. Can I just go on the website and do it?
Go to the mutantfam.com. If you check them out, they you can do that, and absolutely, they would love to talk to you. And
cool. I'll check that out.
I'm always I've been bigging up the Shed as we've been going on.
Awesome.
So it being on Shudder, I think is a big thing, especially because it's such a great streaming service now. I hope Joe Bob does it on a show. I would love to see.
I would love it. You should tell Joe Bob you demand the Shed.
I will do that. I'll do that right after I finish this interview.
Nice. I met Joe Bob in March, and I gave him a copy of it. So tell him, that dude's cool, and you should do his movie.
I absolutely will. I'll even send him the interview and just be like, come on. It's such a great movie. And it's perfect. I love good vampire movies. Like I mentioned Lost Boy before, The Fright Night. This definitely meets that criteria of great vampire movies.
That's what I was going for. And I made some atmospheric decisions based on Near Dark. It's not really like Near Dark, but I took some of the vibes, like some of the atmosphere, you know?
Oh, 100%. I see that, especially location-wise.
Yeah.
I feel that. Just that I can't even describe it, but it's that open feeling, but you're still enclosed in what's going on. I definitely get that vibe from it. I do like to end things on kind of a fun note, but before then, I just what are you working on now? You writing?
I'm juggling a couple of things. I have a feature that I'm staring at on my board right now. It's just comprised of a lot of index cards stuck to a cork board in order. Like I said, I'm trying to pull that Wild West draft together. Yes. So it's kind of what I think it's going to shape up to be. At least, like I said before, where it starts and where it ends are usually two different things. But I'm kind of going for a sort of like Children of the Corn, sort of folk horror kind of thing with some supernatural elements. I'm hoping it turns out that way. We'll see. It doesn't have a title yet, so I can't give you a title. And then I have a couple little side things that I'm trying to develop. I want to do this like sort of I don't know how to explain it. Sort of like an apocalyptic like youth gang, like rival gangs in the apocalypse kind of thing.
That's very cool. I'm excited for that stuff, man. That's right down my avenue. So I'm all there.
Cool.
So we're I like to end things, like I said, on kind of a fun note. And I want to know, it's Halloween season. It's horror movie season is really what it is.
Yeah.
What are your top 5? I have to watch this in the month of October because Halloween's coming up. Horror movies.
Okay, easy. This is an easy question, my friends. All right. Halloween 3.
Nice.
Night of the Demons. Trick or Treat. House on Haunted Hill. I usually watch the original. I watch On Halloween. And let's see, what am I going to give number 5 to, since you're only giving me 5 here?
You can give me a few extra if you want. We got a couple minutes.
All right. Let's see. I already said Night of the Demons. Witchboard. The Stepfather, which is really more of a Thanksgiving film, but it's just very autumny feeling, so I like to watch that one. Let me think. What else? I'm not a big fan of the other Halloween movies. I know this is blasphemy. I get in like arguments all the time with people. I'm not a Michael Myers fan, so I could give a crap if I watch those or not. Sorry if that offends you.
It does not. I love them, but it does not.
It upsets so many horror fans. They're like, "You dick!" Like. Let me think. What else? I recently discovered Hell Night, which I think is really cool.
Nice.
Let me see what else. God, there's so many. What have I watched so far? Night of the Living Dead, The Howling. I love is a great. It's not really a Halloween film. But there's something autumny about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really enjoy it.
Night of the Living Dead is the movie.
Fright Night.
Yeah, it's Fright Night's great. That's the one I'm hosting on the 24-hour marathon.
Oh no way! I watched it twice already this month.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough. The movie theater where I am in Winchester, Virginia, is open, and they were showing it, and I went and saw it.
Oh, sweet! I mean, I've never seen it in 35. I would love to. Trying to think what else. Oh, Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2. I love to watch. I'm trying to make room this year for more newer films. I haven't been catching up on like newer indie stuff, and I need to get on that, or even newer studio stuff. I'm pretty behind. So I really liked Haunt last year that came out. Did you see Haunt?
Yes, great movie.
Yeah, that was awesome. Damien Maffei, who played the devil, is a friend of mine. He's in some of my short films. I should send you my short films. I think you would really like them. I did 3 Halloween short films. I'll send them to you. I'll email them to you when we're done.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. You should check out some new ones that just came out.
That's all I can think of.
Spiral was pretty good. That's on Shudder right now. That came out in 2019 as well.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a new one coming out Friday.
Scare me. I keep hearing mixed things about it. The new one on Shudder.
I think as a writer, you'll really like it.
Cool.
I had this. I was on a show last night. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he doesn't know the world of writing. And he was like, and he said that he was like, I don't know how writers are. He's like, but I don't think writers would be in a room like that talking to each other. I was like, no, that's what they would do.
Yeah.
I was like, that's and it's.
I have to mention. Sorry, I cannot not mention Tales from the Crypt. I love watching Tales from the Crypts.
It's funny.
Terror.
This Friday I'm interviewing Jack Shoulder, the director of Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Oh, cool.
But he directed my favorite Tales from the Crypt episode that still haunts me to this day. Like I have a tingle down my spine every time I watch it.
TV Land?
Fitting Punishment. And that's with the funeral director.
Uncle Ezra?
Yes.
Oh, dude, I love that episode.
Tell me that isn't such a crazy. And I'm 6'8".
In the Bible, Uncle Ezra, when he's coming down the stairs and his feet are chopped off.
Oh my God! And the sneakers are walking by themselves.
Yeah. Don't fuck with somebody's Air Jordans, man.
I just and being 6'8" and like always kind of growing up and being over 6 foot, I was horrified that they're gonna cut my feet off.
You're gonna cut your feet off.
I'm like, Jesus. So like Tales from the Crypt, yeah, absolutely. That is.
You know what's one of my favorite Tales from the Crypts to watch this time of year or in general? The one with Geraldo Rivera. What am I saying? Geraldo Rivera.
I know.
Morton Downey Jr. It's called TV Land Terror, right?
Yes, that is a great episode.
Oh man, that was scary.
I watched that one, and I watched the Frat Brothers.
Later season where the hot chicks bring them to the. Yes,
Kevin Dillon. Yeah. But I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I know I kind of went over our time a little bit, and I'm very sorry about that.
Dude. I'm having fun. This is great.
Absolutely, and I want to extend anytime you want to come back on the show. We have like 11 shows on this channel, so like we're always talking horror. We're always having fun. And we'd love to have you back on. But thank you, Frank Sabatella. Go check out The Shed, everybody. If you're not. You're ridiculous, and I don't know.
The soundtrack is available on vinyl for pre-order right now. So if people are into records, it's a dope soundtrack by Sam Ewing and Bear McCreary, and the packaging is really awesome, and it's going to be shipping end of October. So grab one.
Fantastic soundtrack. So thank you again, Frank, and everybody. Thank you for listening. Make sure you follow at the Scene Snobs for all of our information. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Take care.
Later.